He's not a player, he doesn't coach, but he controls more than anyone on the pitch. From mega transfers to shaping entire leagues, his influence reaches every corner of modern football. He moves silently, but every move changes the game. Some call him a visionary, others are a threat to the sport's soul. So who is this man behind the money, power, and headlines? This is the untold story of the most powerful figure in football and how he rewrote the rules. The man who might be the most powerful person in all of football isn't a player. He's not a coach. He never lifted a World Cup or scored in a final. Most fans wouldn't recognize his face on the street. But behind the scenes, he moves the most significant pieces on the board. His name is Nasser Al-Khelaifi, and what he's built at Paris Saint-Germain and far beyond is more than just a football empire. It's a strategy that touches clubs, media, money, and even politics. Let's start from the beginning. Al-Khelaifi didn't grow up with dreams of playing football. He was raised in Qatar in the 1970s, when the country was still far from being one of the wealthiest nations on earth. His father was a pearl diver. Dangerous work, low pay, and no fame. Nasser picked up a tennis racket instead of a football. He wasn't a star, but he was good enough to represent Qatar. Not many headlines, no trophies, but one thing stood out. He was smart, and he knew how to build relationships. One of the people he trained was a young man who would later become the Emir of Qatar, the country's ruler. That connection changed everything. When Qatar began investing in sports as part of its global image strategy, Nasser was entrusted with increasing responsibility. First, he ran the Tennis Federation. Then he moved into sports media, leading Al Jazeera's sports network, which would later become beIN Sports, a company that now owns the rights to many of the world's biggest football competitions. But Nasser's real power move came in 2011, when he became president of Paris Saint-Germain. Back then, PSG wasn't a European giant. The stadium had empty seats. The team wasn't feared. It had history, but not momentum. What followed wasn't just about buying players. It was about building something bigger. Under Al-Khelaifi, PSG became a global brand. He signed stars like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe. Paris was no longer just the city of fashion. It was now part of the global football conversation. And while most clubs build from the ground up, Al-Khelaifi worked from the outside in. He didn't just want to win trophies. He wanted PSG to be seen and talked about everywhere. The shirts became fashion items. The games became media events. The club opened offices in cities like New York and Singapore. It wasn't just about goals, it was about influence. But it didn't stop with PSG. While he was building one of football's flashiest clubs, Al-Khelaifi was also gaining power off the pitch. He now runs the company that owns the rights to show the biggest matches. He became head of the European Club Association, a group that represents hundreds of clubs. He has a seat at UEFA's top table. All of this means that when big football decisions are made about money, tournaments, or rules, he's right there, helping shape the future of the sport. And that's where things start to get even more complicated. While Nasser Al-Khelaifi was building PSG into a global brand, he was also strengthening his grip on the football world in other areas, quietly but powerfully. One of the most important parts of modern football is the media. The matches, the highlights, the interviews, they all need to be seen. And whoever controls what gets shown, when, and where holds serious power. That's where beIN Sports comes in. Under Al-Khelaifi's leadership, beIN Sports didn't just become another sports network, it turned into one of the key players in global broadcasting. It secured the rights to show top leagues like La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, and even the Champions League in many countries. This wasn't just about watching matches, it was about owning a piece of football's attention. In many places, if you wanted to watch your favorite team or your favorite player, you had to go through beIN. And Al-Khelaifi didn't just stop at buying the rights. Through beIN, he started to influence how football is scheduled, how it's shown to the public, and how much money flows into the game. It gave him a seat at every big negotiation. While other clubs and leagues argued about terms, beIN was the one writing the checks, and that gave Al-Khelaifi serious leverage. But the media was only one part of the picture. Sponsors, the companies that put their logos on shirts, banners, and stadiums, are just as important. And PSG's sponsorship game went to another level. In 2024, PSG earned more money from sponsors than any other club in Europe. Much of it came from Qatari companies, Qatar Airways, Qatar Tourism, Qatar National Bank, and others. These weren't just business deals. They were partnerships tied directly to the same people who owned the club. It created a financial system where PSG had access to money that most clubs could only dream of. Of course, this raised eyebrows. Some critics said it gave PSG an unfair advantage, especially when it came to financial fair play, the rules designed to stop clubs from overspending. But Al-Khelaifi knew how to play the system. He had influence at UEFA. He had strong connections with top football executives. He knew when to push and when to stay quiet. And when the European Super League nearly changed football forever, it was Al-Khelaifi who stood firm. PSG refused to join the breakaway league and instead it backed UEFA. That move didn't just win him praise, it earned him a leadership role in European football's inner circle. So now, he wasn't just running a club, he was shaping the rules, choosing what gets shown on TV, deciding how much money went where. It was no longer just about Paris Saint-Germain. It was about controlling the game from every angle and doing it without ever stepping onto the pitch. But even with all this power, there was still one piece of the puzzle that he couldn't fully control: the players. Players today aren't just athletes, they're global brands, and no one showed that more clearly than Kylian Mbappé. He wasn't just the star of PSG, he was the face of the club, the league, and even of France. His influence stretched beyond the field. Every goal, every transfer rumor, every photo he posted online, it had power. And for years, Al-Khelaifi made Mbappé the center of PSG's project. But by 2024, things had changed. Mbappé left, not quietly, but in a storm of tension and legal threats. He claimed PSG owed him money, bonuses and wages worth tens of millions. His lawyers went to court, asking for the club's accounts to be frozen. They were even asked to be banned from the Champions League. PSG denied the claims, stating that an agreement had been made for Mbappé to walk away freely. But now the fight is public, and it's personal. This wasn't just a contract dispute, it was a power struggle. The star player versus the most powerful executive. And for Al-Khelaifi, this was unfamiliar ground. He could shape TV deals, he could steer UEFA decisions, but he couldn't stop a superstar from walking away and talking loudly on the way out. Mbappé's move sent a message. Players are no longer just part of the machine. They can challenge it. Even so, PSG didn't fall apart. In fact, it might have been the turning point. Without Mbappé, Neymar, or Messi, the club finally focused on something different, building a real team, not a collection of stars, but a unit. Under Luis Enrique, PSG started playing better football. Young players stepped up. The system became stronger. They reached the Champions League final and crushed Inter Milan. It wasn't because of a superstar moment. It was because they played as a single unit. And that's the irony. Al-Khelaifi spent years trying to buy greatness, only to finally find it by letting go of the big names. PSG became a football team again, not just a global billboard. They stopped chasing fame and started chasing structure. But this victory didn't mean Al-Khelaifi lost power. In fact, it revealed just how profound his influence is. He learned from every setback, every failure, and he adapted. From media to sponsorships, from club leadership to football politics, he had built a network that touched nearly every aspect of the modern game. He's not a coach, he's not a player, but he has changed the game in ways few can match. The most powerful man in football today doesn't score goals. He decides who gets to show them, who gets paid for them, and sometimes who gets to play at all. That's Nasser Al-Khelaifi's legacy, not built on applause, but on control. Quiet, steady, and impossible to ignore.